The alarm did not so much ring as it did shatter the fragile cocoon of my sleep. Its sound, a brutal metallic screech that seemed to echo the anxiety already coiling in the pit of my stomach. I silenced it with the hand that trembled slightly, the cool morning air of my apartment feeling more like the anticipatory hush before a storm. This was not a morning like any other. It did not smell of lazy coffee and weekend pastries. It smelled of starched new clothes, fear, and the waxy, botanical scent of the expensive lipstick I bought to look older. Today, I was to become Ms. Anna Petrova, teacher of advanced biology to the senior class of Oakwood Secondary School. The walk to school was a blur of shifting autumn leaves and my own frantic heartbeat thudding in my ears. The main doors of the school, heavy and dark-stained oak, swallowed me whole, and the hallway within was a cacophony of slamming lockers and the shrieking laughter of adolescence, a sound that felt both alien and intimidating. The air was thick with the smell of industrial cleaner, old paper, and the unmistakable sweet and sour scent of teenage energy. My classroom, number 214, was to be my sanctuary and my stage. It smelled of dusty chalk, the faint, acrid tang of preserved formaldehyde from the lab stations at the back, and the ghost of 1,000 forgotten lessons. Sunlight, pale and hesitant, streamed through the large windows, illuminating dancing motes of dust. I stood behind my desk, my fingers tracing the cool, pitted surface of the teacher's desk, a vast, ancient fortress of dark wood that felt like it belonged to someone infinitely wiser and more formidable than I. I arranged my new planner, my pen holder, a small, resilient succulent I'd brought from home, a tiny piece of my own life to anchor me in this vast, unfamiliar sea. The bell for first period was a deafening electric shriek that jolted through me. My palms were damp. I could hear the thunder of footsteps and the rising murmur of voices just beyond the door. I took a deep breath, straightened the lapels of my emerald green blazer, a calculated choice to suggest authority, though it felt like a costume, and walked to the front of the desk, leaning against it in what I hoped was a pose of casual confidence. They flooded in, a wave of denim, backpacks, and scrutinizing eyes. They were so tall, some of them, their faces already etched with the sharp angles of adulthood, yet their expressions still held a teenage nonchalance that was utterly terrifying. I felt a flush creep up my neck. To them, I was an event, a novelty. I was not the stern, middle-aged Mrs. Dalloway I was replacing. I was something to be sized up, decoded, and tested. I began my carefully rehearsed introduction, my voice sounding thin and reedy in the large room. Good morning. My name is Miss Petrova, and I will be your guide through the wonders of advanced biology this year. A few bored nods, a lot of indifferent stares, and then, from the back row, a pair of eyes. His name, I would learn later, was Alexei. He wasn't smirking, not quite. He was just watching, intensely. A slight, curious tilt to his head. He had dark, unruly hair and the confident stillness of someone who knew his own presence was felt. The lesson began, a lecture on the intricacies of eukaryotic cell division. I spoke about centrioles and spindle fibers, my words feeling like dry leaves in the air. I was losing them. The shuffling of feet, the covert glances at phones under desks. It was a silent verdict of my failure. Then a hand went up. It was a boy with a cheeky grin, one of the ones who had been whispering in the corner. Miss Petrova, he began, his tone dripping with a false innocence that set my nerves on edge. You're talking about reproduction on a cellular level, but how does that compare to the human reproductive process? In detail. A few snickers erupted around him.
My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the test I had dreaded. I could feel the heat in my cheeks, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. I would not be shamed by a child. I offered a small, cool smile, one I had practiced in the mirror.
A pertinent, if broadly framed question, Daniel, I said, my voice gaining a steadiness I did not feel. I walked slowly to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. The mitosis we're discussing is asexual, a solitary, efficient process. Human reproduction, as you are undoubtedly aware, is meiosis-based and sexual, requiring gametes from two individuals. I turned and drew a quick, precise diagram of a sperm cell fertilizing an ovum, my movements clinical, detached. The detail you're so curious about involves the haploid spermatozoon penetrating the zona pellucida of the haploid ovum, resulting in a diploid zygote, a far more complex and energetically costly endeavor than simple mitosis. Wouldn't you agree? Perhaps less efficient, but evolutionarily superior for genetic diversity. The classroom was silent. Daniel's smirk had faltered. I had taken his crude implication and buried it under a mountain of scientific terminology, all delivered with the flat, dispassionate tone of a textbook. I had not blushed. I had lectured. I had not scolded. I had educated. It was a deflection, a parry, and in doing so, I had inexplicably flirted. It was in the slight raise of my eyebrow, the almost imperceptible challenge in my eyes that said, "Is that all you have?" I had played his game and beaten him at it, not with authority, but with intellect. The dynamic shifted. The challenges became a strange intellectual dance. Another boy, emboldened, asked about the evolutionary purpose of certain physical attractions. I answered in terms of pheromones and biological imperatives for strong genetic matches, all the while maintaining unwavering eye contact, my tone a blend of amusement and academic rigor. I was walking a tightrope, feeling a thrilling, dangerous power in navigating their adolescent provocations without ever slipping into unprofessionalism. I was the cool teacher, the one who wouldn't break, who could handle their nonsense and spin it into gold.
"Aren't we all?" he said, a faint, knowing smile touching his lips. He held out the drive, his movements deliberate but respectful, maintaining a careful distance between us. As I reached to take it, our hands did not touch, yet the space between his fingers and mine seemed to hum with unspoken tension. My breath caught for a fraction of a second, not from contact, but from the intensity of the moment. I did not step away. We remained like that, suspended in the quiet of the empty classroom, the boundary between us feeling as delicate and profound as a cell membrane, invisible, yet defining everything. His eyes held mine, and in their depths I saw not just a student, but a person with a maturity that surprised me. And in that moment, I wondered if he saw not just a teacher, but someone navigating the same uncertainties he was. It was a silent, dangerous understanding that passed between us, a recognition of something that should remain unacknowledged, a connection that had no place within these walls. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, his voice low and steady, before turning and walking away. His footsteps echoed softly down the now deserted hallway, each step seeming to mark the distance growing between us. I stood motionless, the cool weight of the flash drive firm in my palm. The classroom, which had felt like a refuge hours earlier, now seemed to hold its breath, as if bearing witness to a choice that had not yet been made. The fading evening light stretched long, gentle shadows across the floor, and the silence felt heavier, more significant. I had handled the day's challenges with composure and cleverness, deflecting jokes and steering attention back to learning. But this was different. It was a quiet, almost invisible moment that had nonetheless shifted something deep within me. It was a door I had never intended to approach, and now I stood before it, aware of what lay on the other side, yet knowing I could not step through. I had endured the battles of my first day teaching, only to find myself facing a far more subtle and internal struggle, one that would require wisdom I wasn't sure I possessed.